So, pain and public humiliation were brought on pylorate towers such as this one. So, pylorate tower. So, you can see the picture. This kind of punishment is very harsh to the prisoners. So, by today's standards, crime, the punishment in the early colonial times seems both petty and horrific. During William's times, retribution where the convict is given their just deserts were just primary goals, and punishment was both excruciating and public. A death of sentence met those committed the biggest like murders and rape, but for all other sins like lying, conjuring, adultery, skipping church, and being without means, various levels of pain, torture by public community were ordered. So this kind of punishment is being held by the public. So many people will witness this kind of punishment. Si William Penn, founder of the Pennsylvania colony, having suffered in the prison, ushered in reforms in um, 1680. Those convicted of small crimes got bail, and more serious crime were punished by the hard labor. The jail were replaced with workhouses where the prisoner worked most of release work of the day, and learned to trade to the use when released. Free food and rudimentary health care was provided. Torture and humiliation was replaced with a modicum and dignity of humanity. Ben died in 1718, and by the all accounts, his reforms died with him. However, many scholars being pen credits for moving the if only a few degrees. Hard labor and flogging replaced branding and maiming. Though the retribution was still stated goal, reformation of the offender was now being openly considered. The Quaker Friends, and the Pennsylvania Prison Society. In the 1787, Benjamin Franklin and a group of fellow Quakers formed the Philadelphia Society of Alleviating the Misery of Public Prison. This later became Pennsylvania Prison Society, and they became the Pennsylvania Prison, began lobbying and significant reforms in the prison system. In 1790, Legat Dervish legislation was passed that converted the city jail built in Walnut Street in 1773. So the Walnut Street jail was being mentioned in the Pennsylvania system. Believe that the Quakers believed that the separate system should be instituted where the prisoner could seek penitence through isolation and reflection. So they tend to institute prisoner to seek penitence through isolation and reflection. The Pennsylvania Prison Society pressured the legislature to explain the Walnut Street model across the state. The dignitaries and officials from the states and England visited the city judge. These reforms of themselves became known as the Pennsylvania system, which possessed the following attributes: So these are the attributes of Pennsylvania system. Isolation to foster as the prisoners had time to reflect on his or her misdeeds. So the prisoner will reminisce his bad activities in the past. Um, Humanitarian base as provide better food and healthcare. So the prisoner will being provided by medical healthcare and food. Prisoner work alone to make good and learn of trade. So the focus move from retribution to rehabilitation. So from retribution, they tend to reform to rehabilitation, to a good progress in the system. End of era. The Pennsylvania reforms brought overcrowding and increased costs, and soon the individual rooms gave way to larger rooms and multiple inmates, and fewer inmates learned skill as demand tried up their products. The prison developed into human storehouse, which soon become riddled with the fate and disease. So the in the end of the era, Pennsylvania system reforms but overcrowding increase costs, so they tend to make them make their products livelihood activities in order for their betterness. So let's tackle about the five deployment of prison. So first, prison overcrowding. Second, pre-trial detainees. Third, high tolls. And fourth, vigilante justice. And last is corruption. So prison overcrowding. So prison overcrowding is a social phenomenon occurring when the demand for space in prison in jurisdiction exceed the capacity for prisoners. The issue associated with prison overcrowding are not new but have been brewing for many years. So overcrowding is um, uh, prisoners in the prison, which during the United States War on Drugs and state left responsible for solving the prison overcrowding issues with a limited amount of money. Moreover, federal prison population may increase if separated adhere to federal policies such as mandatory minimum sentence. So, so as what I have mentioned, overcrowding is the common issue in the prisons, and it was being it was being increase of prisoners when the illegal activities and or illegal drugs was being taken by the people. Pre-trial detainees. People in pre-trial detention have assisted in accused of crime but not been found guilty of crimes charged. Place the pre-trial detention often ill-equipped to provide health service. People pre-trial detention often spend time in worse condition than people who have been convicted. So, pre-trial detention or pre-trial detainees have worse condition compared to the um, convicted already. And they are the also the factor of why prisons is overcrowding. Remand, also known as pre-trial detention, preventive detention, or provisional detention, is process of detaining a person until the pre-trial after they have been arrested the charged with the offense. A person who is held in a prison detention center or held under house arrest. Death, high death tolls. The prison high statistic record a number of deaths resulting from particular cause, especially an accident, battle, or nature disaster. So the prison have the prison's rating in high death tolls. Vigilante justice. Vigilante justice often describe the action of a single person or a group of people who claim to enforce the law but lack of legal authority to do so. However, the term can also describe a general state of disarray for lawlessness in which competing groups or people or claims to enforce the law in a given area. So, vigilante justice is a group or people or a single people who execute the law and to take action and to enforce the law, but they have lacked in authority to do so because it is not registered as an officers. So corruption decrease public trust in justice and weakness the capability of the judicial system to guarantee the protection of human rights, and its affect the task of and duties of the judges, prosecutor, lawyers, and the other legal professions. Corruption occurs at every stage of criminal justice chain. It occurs in police station, prosecutors, officer, judge, and judiciary and prison. And it started the chain. The police may misuse the power of arrest to extort money. After arrest, bribes may need to be paid to prevent torture or any abuse. So corruption is literally the problem of the justice system because many officers are not doing well their duties. They tend to get a money instead of um, doing their job in a good way. So next, forms of punishment. So there is a lot of forms of punishment. First, capital punishment. Capital punishment, also known as a death penalty, in the legal taking of the life of criminal. The law allows for the death of the offender as punishment for the crime or crimes committed. So it is literally the death penalty of a offender with because he 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 do and he act um, serious criminality to a certain person or a society. So it is one of the most severe forms of punishment as it involves most severe this involves taking the life of individuals. An objective of capital punishment are retribution of the life of the offender is taken as vengeance for the life of victim. Deterrence as the other potential offender which fear death as a punishment, and incapacitation as the offender will be permanently removed from society. So in order to not to do certain criminal acts of a person, and this way of punishment is best described for them because they tend not to do certain criminal acts because they are scared in um, taking their lives or the death penalty. So second, imprisonment. Imprisonment is the restraint or confinement of an offender, liberty and punishment for committing a crime. It could be a few hours or for life. The court usually determines the length of imprisonment based on the crime committed. It also looks at any maximum or minimum terms of set out under the perspective law criminalizing the action. The main objective of imprisonment is incapacitation. However, prison sentences are often met out to serve other objectives. These include deterrence of the offender from recidivism. Imprisonment also serves as deterrence or other potential offenders. So imprisonment is one of the best way in punishing offender because the offender will reminisce his bad actions and make it in make it uh make it in his life as a lesson to his life not to do that certain criminality again. So judicial corporal punishment. Judicial corporal punishment is purposeful infliction of physical pain and other offender. The rationale of corporal punishment is that intense pain will fill the offender with a desire to avoid pain in the future, to provide with him immediately opportunity to change his behavior and join law-abiding society. Many countries have abolished judicial corporal punishment. So this kind of punishment is quite it's quite hard for the offenders because this kind of punishment tends to do certain physical action that you will get pain in order for the people not to do criminality in the society. So next, fines. A fine is a sum of money that an offender pays a punishment or committing a crime. The purpose of the imposing of fine is to punish the offender, compensate the state of the offender, and deter future criminal acts. The court may also order an offender to pay a fine or the victim or the crime as restitution. When a crime affect the material, and personal well-being of another person, the court may order the offender to pay money the victim to restore him or his property to the position he was before the crime was committed. So fines is literally involved with money because the offender tends to pay money of his criminality, his or her criminal acts. Next, compensation. Compensation is a punishment appears some resemble to the damage award in civil litigation. When crime is committed against the possession of victim may lose property, money, incurred damage or injury. The court may therefore decide the compensation the victim is additional punishment of the offender. So compensation is literally the additional punishment of the offender. So next, forfeiture and confiscation. Punishment forfeiture is a involuntary um, relinquishment in money or property or a punishment of a crime. This includes subject matters forfeiture, instrumentally forfeiture, or forfeiture of the proceeds of a crime. Subject matter forfeiture is where the subject matter as punishment. For example, it was offense in transporting of ivory and the ivory being the subject matter of the offense is prohibited. So forfeiture and confiscation is about taking object of the offenders and try to confiscate whether he or she is guilty of that certain criminal act. Instrumentally and forfeiture it was aimed to use to commit the crime in forfeited therefore the example where the crime is transporting ivory of the vehicle was transported the ivory is an instrument used to commit offense and is forfeited. Forfeiture proceed of being means that any income of the offender might have got out on commission of the crime is forfeited. There is also assessed forfeited was goes beyond instrumentality and proceeds of the crime. Forfeiture as assess of the offender, which may not be directly linked to the specific crime, are prohibited as they are deemed to have been acquired as a result of criminal activity.